Welcome to our second segment of YourTown television program this month, and Artivism, which is what I call my segment. Hello again, I'm King Grossman, the host of Artivism, and I'm very excited about our second and third segment because today you're going to get a doubleheader of Chuck Banner, a wonderful indie producer, director, social justice advocate, indigenous rights advocate. And Chuck, you're right now on the front lines, and tell us a little bit about what's going on right now on the front lines.
Well, I'm in Bismarck, North Dakota. I went up there like the day before Christmas and drove across the country, got there, and now what's going on that impacts me is the trial's been extended to November 5th, so I'm going to be there through Thanksgiving. So in my personal life, taking away from the wonderful Monterey and the beauty of Carmel that I've gotten to love so much, that's what's happened personally.
Yes.
What is part of is trials that are ongoing, and in particular, two trials that I'm involved in. There's been 800 trials that came out of the Standing Rock water protector months of action.
Yes.
And a lot of them have been dismissed, a lot of them due to just bad prosecution, false arrest, really, in terms of what they were supposed to be and why they were being arrested, and people being charged with rioting and, just when they're praying. And also lack of evidence, lack of trespassing signs when someone, a lot of cases were thrown out on technicalities of being accused of trespassing, but there was no trespassing signs. There was nobody telling them they were trespassing. There was just law enforcement there enforcing that they were supposed to not be trespassing.
Right.
A lot of cases got thrown out.
As they were nonviolently protesting.
Right, and a lot of cases got thrown out on that kind of technicality because so much of it is just for show, and for show to create some sense of a legal precedent on which people could be arrested and stop them from protesting.
And to quash our rights.
Right, and it became clear.
Protest.
So the court, things were falling by the wayside. There were some federal cases that didn't fall by the wayside so much, and people are ending up with 3 years and 6 years, and really for protesting. Also amidst an incredible backdrop of intrigue and mercenary, military companies protecting pipelines, and law enforcement being caught up in it, and some of them trying to do the right thing, and a lot of them being caught up in this momentum of just creating this whole kind of radical press that these people were jihadists and going against the grain of America and fighting against what's everything that oil and commerce stands for. So there's just a strange energy that went on, and I think the hardest thing to watch when I was there was the going to the courts and looking at people cut a deal and accepting 3 years in jail for basically trying to protect water.
Nonviolently. Yes, be clear.
Yeah. And there were trucks on fire, and there were things that happened. So a lot of these that became federal ones were things of arson, but then there's even question of really who lit them, and how did they find out people were lighting them, and was it... One of the issues I've come to understand is the idea of, is it private... It's the idea that private security can't take pictures or provide evidence that becomes part of prosecution. Law enforcement has to do that work. So one of the questions that's all going is the whole intermingling of law enforcement and private security and energy transfer partners, and how it became this whole dynamic of turning the native peoples and the thousands of people that came there into bad people.
Yes.
Just turn them into bad people.
And surrounded by militarized forces.
And pardon me, but I'm dinging here, so I'm going to do that and stop that from dinging.
Yeah, no more dinging. That's all right. So you're there with the Lakota People's Law Project and the Romero Institute.
Right.
And you're serving there as part of that team as a digital evidence coordinator.
Yes.
And so tell us about the overall bit, but then tell us about what you're doing as digital evidence coordinator and why that's important.
Well, a lot of this comes down to, and when I was, this is the first time I've been in the courtroom.
Right.
Going to hear there was a pretrial hearing to suppress information from the federal prosecutors on Red Fawn. Mm-hmm. And it was basically about the fact that there were informants that the FBI has admitted to. There were a lot of things that started coming out that were never.
Talk for the viewers what Red Fawn is.
Red Fawn is a woman who all her life was an activist.
Yes.
And there was really, when you look at the papers and things that came out through articles on The Intercept and stuff, there was really a map almost of the people that they wanted to get.
Yes.
The leaders that they wanted to target, or the people that they wanted to make leaders so that they could target them.
And she was one of those.
And she was one of them.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see that they had kind of a roadmap, and that then they executed this roadmap before they arrested. Mm-hmm. And Red Fawn, under what I think are sketchy facts, had a gun. Well, it turns out the gun was owned by an informant who was an FBI informant that got involved with her romantically, and it was his gun that was on her that they say she shot with the police. So here's a woman who's grown up all her life as an activist, her mother, her family, and she's going to go get a gun and try to shoot law enforcement agents because that's how they're going to win. I mean, it's just patently absurd. But the real problem in watching it was getting the discovery and the fact that really the judge stopped, because in the hearing that I saw, there was 9 months of discovery they were trying to get, and things weren't released over 9 months, and they were trying to get the hearing advanced and moved down the road, and the judge said, no, you've had enough time. And basically seeing people have to plead out because they couldn't move the thing through the justice system to the point of honesty and clarity fast enough that it was too high a risk, so they copped a deal. Instead of looking at 15 years to life, she accepts 6 years because they can't get the evidence out. So, but what I saw in that, back to your question, is there was one video that played out through the whole hearing, maybe 2 or 3 videos. There was an aerial shot, there was a shot down low from water protectors. So when I say digital evidence, it's basically audio, video, documents, texts, phone recordings, phone chats, pictures, so that all falls, because everything's digital, that's really falls under digital evidence. Though the main focus of what I was doing for water protectors throughout last year was coordinating audio and video from websites and things that were all the live footage, and we had private videographers that gave us material, and I was helping to coordinate for the Water Protectors Legal Collective for all 34 or 50 lawyers that could go online and see all the footage. Now I'm working for LPLP, who first sent me up to Standing Rock. So after really about 8 months of hiatus, I'm back with LPLP working full-time. So I'm coordinating basically all the evidence that comes. Lakota People's Law Project.
Yes.
And so I'm basically taking all evidence that comes in and organizing it so it can pass through a group of about 15 people that are on the case, between 3 or 4 5 attorneys. I have 2 support staff in my department, which is really kind of the media department, but handling all evidence. And we have someone who's working on searching all the documents. We have interns. So and that's a lot of the difference between what we're doing gets into the style of the defense.
Yes. Which
we'll get into in the second segment.
Okay.
Because really what I'm doing is helping Chase Iron Eyes beat this rap.
And Chase is one of the leaders in the Lakota people's movement.
Yes, and he's one of the leaders emerge.
Yes.
One of the charges against him is that he was trespassing, and he was inciting a riot. So basically he was a leader that brought on this riot at the last child's camp. So on one level he is a leader but on the level technically of was he leading and running that event? No.
From a legal standpoint,
But,
and he was not.
well, and also from a practical standpoint,
Yeah.
nobody was running Standing Rock.
Yeah,
Nobody
that's
was in
true.
charge. You were there.
Everyone was. It
You
was
were there.
leader full.
And it was elders, you know,
Yeah.
it was elders and you know, when someone understood what the message was or the next steps were, there would be moments where people would lead just in terms of because
Yes.
they knew how to
Yes.
carry a meeting forward, what would be the
Yes.
next thing or the actions to be taken.
Yes. Yeah.
To find a leader is a little
Yeah.
tricky.
Yeah.
And I don't know what is our time like on
We have about 8 minutes or so on this first segment remaining.
so let's go to look at something on Chase. I brought
Let's do it.
a video.
It's magnificent. It's the one I've seen. It's magnificent.
It's wild and it's extemporaneous.
Yes.
It's Chase on the hill. We went up on the hill overlooking Standing Rock, and he lays it out.
It gets down to the essence of this.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's basically, and what I find Native peoples involved in when they get on camera and do this, they're just trying to take the next step that's part of a continuity
Yes.
they've been dealing with for 500 years, and they keep trying to explain it to people.
And I would ask our viewers as they watch this to put this through the lens of what's going on with our climate overall.
Sure.
And climate justice.
Sure.
And if we don't protect our water and our environment and our air and the level of heat that's causing all of this to exacerbate and spiral, this is where I believe the indigenous folk and the Lakota people, and when you get down to someone like Chase, but there are many, but Chase has a gift of articulation and strength of character. I mean, you know,
Right.
He's not pleading out. He's saying, no, let's get this evidence on the table.
Right. That's a key point. Chase could get off on the same kind of technicalities, no trespassing signs, the idea of inciting a riot. They're there praying. The most violent thing that happened that day is they had their arms locked.
Yes.
They were standing up on the hill.
Yes.
You know, mixed the teepees, praying, and the law enforcement came to pull them apart. And the idea that they held their arms like this
Yes.
is like a riot.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
patently absurd. But what Chase has agreed to do, and what Chase is risking, is not taking that easy way out, and taking a way out that requires discovery and gets people like Tiger Swan and Energy Transfer Partners and the FBI and all the state regulatory agencies, that gets those people on the stand or in deposition talking about what happened.
Let's go to the clip.
So we're going to show Chase here, and I love he uses the line in here. He talks about judicial rights a priori of water. That
Yeah.
basically water is alive and was alive and gives us life. So the idea that we don't consider its importance as an entity, which is starting to happen. Rivers are starting to get the rights to be people around the world from indigenous people's perspective.
Yes.
Is simply to walk with respect and to try to create economic realities that include certain, spiritual, psychological assertions like Mini-Wichoni, like water is life, water is sacred. We've got to move beyond water is the real foundation of all economic value in this world. There is no energy, food, or national security unless there's water security. But we've got to move beyond that very technical, very within the Western male's rational scientific gaze, that way of viewing the world that's kind of like black and white. We've got to transcend that and start saying things like water is sacred, water is life, water is alive. It's older than us. It has juridical rights a priori to our very existence. Those are places we can go. And those are places that indigenous peoples that the West has written off as primitive or uncivilized or barbaric or antithetical to progress. Those are places that those very knowledge systems can now lead the world into a more whole worldview and eventually and immediately a different economic reality, a more civilized, a more capital without compassion is uncivilized.
And it's catching on in Europe.
Yes, it's gonna go.
Standing Rock just kicks some ass.
It's beyond our comprehension. It truly is. I think I know enough about it, and I like to act like, use a few big words and try to encapsulate it, try to let it flow, try to channel and express the energy. But it's bigger than us. This is part of the incomprehensible sacred evolution that is happening. There is a spiritual evolution, a big bang of spiritual evolution occurred and is continuing to grow because of Standing Rock. There's no going back for us now. We have evolved. No longer will we sit back and allow the corporate state, the forces of fear and division, abstraction and separation, all of that they're still trying to perpetrate. They're doing a good job of it because they own all the institutions of media, of knowledge, of law, of economics, of policy, so on and so forth. They're crafting our very realities, the way that we see ourselves in the sacred universal reality, the way that we deconstruct or have to work our way through their versions of the self, their versions of the ego. You know, those psychological dilemmas, spiritual dilemmas that all human beings must encounter, must engage, must suffer through as part of our human condition. They are trying to give us the frame, all of us in the world, they're trying to give us the framework within which we can navigate those sacred challenges. What we are saying, those of us who are still here of the original nations, the peoples who carry those sacred duties, is that there is another way to color your universe. There is another way to interpret the sanctity of the worlds and how to coexist in those worlds and how to treat not only our spirits, but the land and the waters, the sacred sites and the cosmos as one. To unify with the universe and recognize your co-existence, your co-creation of our reality. That's the responsibility that lies with us, and only us. We don't have to go to other human beings, other idols, nobody. Wakantanka gives us that responsibility and that ability to determine that, to grapple with that on our own terms. And that's what all of us are doing right now, subconsciously, to borrow a term from their knowledge systems. We're all doing that. We're all trying to deconstruct that. We know it's imbalanced. This is a deliberate product. I don't even know how to give it terms to fully encapsulate it.
And it's got to turn into economies.
It's got to
turn into economies for everyone.
We've got to make it real. Think about why are we going to war right now, for instance? That doesn't really serve any evolutionary purpose. In fact, it's retrograde. Just like the fossil fuel economy, the carbon-based, fiat currency-based extractive destruction that we've known as our economic reality. That's 20th century. That's a thing of the past, and everybody is on this path of evolving. If you're not on that path and you're maladaptive, then you're going to go the way of the dinosaur, and you're going to be obsolete. We have to adapt. There's a changing reality about us. We can argue all day about whether or not climate change is man-made, whether it's synthetic. The reality is that the climate is changing. The climate is seeking justice on its own behalf. That's what climate justice is to me.
Chase says it all. I mean, he connects us to what sustains us and calls on our systems to handle that in a way that is sustainable, and certainly points out where that is going just the opposite direction. And this is what this necessity defense is all about that's being brought up in the courthouse. that you're a part of in helping champion this.
It is. And I think the one thing he brings up in this that's just people are starting to realize is just the water is life isn't just a saying. I mean, it's something we all have to realize, and people will. In the next 5 years, people are going to realize that there's a and it's an understanding that he says in this that indigenous people can start leading, not just kinda. This kind of thought can start leading the changes that we need to bring about in our structure, like you're saying. It's in our government, in our local governments, in our regional and state governments, about pollution and stuff. It's a perspective that Native peoples have, and the idea that they're primitive, and all this stuff. They're as smart as anybody, and if not smarter.
And they're spiritually brilliant
so
because
it's time
they're connected with this, with our land and our earth and our resources.
Yeah.
And so with that, we got our beep.
Okay.
I suppose.
Got it.
We'll wind down but please stay tuned for our next segment. We'll be back in just a minute, and we'll talk about what's going on here at Standing Rock and the work that is being done in the courthouse with the Lakota People's Law Project. Chuck Banner and the team that he's with has the potential to open up an indigenous protest with allies to really deal with climate justice, to get us off of fossil fuels and transform into sustainable energy. Thank you very much. We'll be back in just a bit.